Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Perfectly Good Podcast, the only podcast on the internet that is counting every John Hyatt song from A to Z. I am one of your hosts, Jesse Jackson, and joining me as we chase the red-tailed hawk shooting down the canyon is my Springsteen. God, you can tell I have Springsteen on my mind. My John
We
Hyatt
can forgive
sister.
Jesse.
Yes, Sylvan. Yes, we are recording this on Monday, February 6th, and on February 10th, I will be seeing Bruce live for the first time for 4 shows in 2 weeks. So I definitely have Springsteen on my mind. But right now we're talking John. How are you doing?
Great. And, let's add another feather to John's cap that even amongst that kind of excitement that you're seeing the boss 4 times, you want to sit here and have a conversation with me about John Hyatt songs. And, the boss is the boss, but there is no one other than John Hyatt. And I think he holds up. And I'm really excited to talk about the song that we've got for today, because I'm not going to jump ahead and give a rating early, but this is going to be one that it's not about, how low are we going to go, but how high we're going to go, at least for me.
Yeah, you've been mentioned the song we're talking about is Before I Go, and you had shared with me that you have some personal connections to this song. I do not have any personal connections, but I do adore the song. Not to give my rating away either. So why don't we just the facts?
Just the facts. Okay, so this is track 11, the closing track on Crossing Muddy Waters, which was released in April 2000. It was released both by Vanguard Records and I believe now defunct eMusic. And I was surprised that it's the first time we've talked about a song from that album, which there's so much story behind how Crossing Muddy Waters came to be. It's another situation which happened multiple times in John's career where a record company and he were not seeing eye to eye, and he found himself without a record company and wanted to put a record together without the oversight of the corporate overlords, and came up with something that blew even his fans away at the time. It's well documented in Mike's book, which we refer to often. The album was nominated for Best Contemporary Folk Album in 2001 by the Grammys. It ended up losing to Emmylou Harris's Red Dirt Girl, but that is another such great album. It is also the first time that John recorded an acoustic album, and there is no drummer on the entire Crossing Muddy Waters. So his backup on this are Davey Farraher and David Immergluck by themselves. It's also kind of telling at the time that one of the best live versions I've ever heard was released directly on johnhyatt.com, which is this brand spanking new website back in 2001. And they were really engaging. He had a tour manager who would give like a little snippet from the road story and put up a couple of live songs from each of this stops on that tour. And there was a great version of Before I Go with just John Hyatt solo that was recorded in Santa Cruz, California, April 2nd, 2001. I think if you do a little bit of digging on the internet, you can still find it, although it's not on johnhyatt.com as it once was. We also found a couple of covers that we'll get into, I'm sure, Jesse. One was by Mary Beth Cross, which was recorded in 2011 for her album In My Right Mind. Interestingly enough, that was recorded in Franklin, Tennessee, which is John's hometown. And there was another cover version by a band called Barefoot, that is Bear, Bear, as in the animal's foot, not running around without your socks and shoes on. And that was a group that are from Alaska by way of Nashville. And that album actually was #1 on the Billboard Bluegrass charts for a while. So there's a lot to talk about with this song. I think I've covered the facts. Jesse, did I miss anything?
No, you also sent me a couple other amateur quote
That's
unquote
right.
covers of it. It is a really yeah, it's a great song. It I loved all the covers, each of them. When a song is something brilliant, it hearing somebody else's interpretation of it just kind of enhances its enjoyment. So yeah, I'm looking forward to talk about this one a lot. So I'm going to start with um, "Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening" by Robert
Oh
Frost.
my.
And he says, he talks about in a wagon, right? He stops, and in the last verse is, "The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep." Um, I don't know if John is specifically referencing a Robert Frost poem, but if either, I don't know, consciously but subconsciously, I thought of that line when he's saying that, because many miles before I go, many miles before I go.
It's using the repetition in a similar way to really bring home the point of that monotony and potentially weariness.
Yeah,
Um, Although I wouldn't say that the overall tone of this song has the same kind of weariness that I've always associated with that last stanza of Robert Frost.
yes,
Um, but that's a great reference to bring up because it, it is a very poetic song, even compared to so many of John's
right.
brilliant songwriting. Yeah.
Yeah. It is. The other thing I wanted to bring up is, I love "I will try, I will stumble, but I will
Mm.
fly, he told me so." One of my other favorite songs is by Chuck Brodsky, and he does "We Are Each Other's Angels." And the singer-songwriter from Texas, Sara Hickman, did a version of it. And one of the lines is, "Sometimes you'll stumble, sometimes you'll just lie down, sometimes you'll get lonely with all these people around. You might shiver when the wind blows, you might get blown away, you might lose a little color, you might lose a little faith. We are each other's angels." I love the word "stumble." There's just something
Mm.
about that, because it's not fall. It's not, it is, I'm stumbling. I'm not totally going to the ground. I've had a little bit of a pause. I've had a little bit of a misstep maybe, but I'm still upright. I'm still moving forward.
Yes. And I think the two elements there that are very powerful are the admitting of your ability to fall, but also your ability to pull yourself out of it. There's a humility in saying that you will stumble, and there's a humility through all of this. Um, he even says proud and high or low and humble. Both can exist in our struggles day to day.
Yeah, and you mentioned this is very lyrical and very poetic. you know, just start at the beginning. "I've been sleeping for some hours, just woke up and you were there. Like the morning, like the flowers, sunlight whispering in my ears. Red Talk Hawk shooting down the canyon, put me on that wind he rides." That is imagery that is just beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, it literally gives me goosebumps. And I am kind of a sucker for any time any artist uses second person in lyrics or poetry. Um, I'm struck every time I hear this song by how it feels that John is speaking to me personally, but also at the same time, he could be talking to anyone. He could be talking to his wife. He could be talking to his child. He could literally be talking to God, which is kind of what resonates for me over and over. There's that, who is the you that any of us are speaking to, and who is the you that any of us connect to. And when we talk about, you know, I will fly, he told me so, who's he? You know, what's interesting is if you look at the liner notes of this album, um, speaking of humility, everything is in a lowercase. There's really no uppercase he, and all of the first lines are lowercase, which I think is just kind of a subtle way of saying, like, I'm not taking myself too seriously here. But I think if this were to be released by a Christian rock uh, band, they would absolutely use uppercase he in those lines when he's saying he told me so. But it's up to interpretation, just like John says often when he's talking about have a little faith in me, or is anybody there, there's not a lot he's going to answer about God, just that it isn't him.
Yeah, I do that. That's because that was one of my questions is, and I love that you leave it vague. I will fly, he told me so. Um, there's we're gonna play armchair psychiatrist here, but we also know that John had a rough relationship with his parents. And this could very much be where uh but I will fly because he told me so. Not necessarily could be his father, could be a mentor, could be someone who believed in him. And we don't have to take literally the he. It could be someone else in his life. Um, I love the can't decide which way to travel on the ground or in the sky. All my schemes have kind of unraveled, and all that's left is you and I. Unraveled is another perfect word. It
Yes.
the imagery of unraveling, right? You see a piece of cloth that's starting to unravel, and it's hard to put it back together. Once something starts unraveling, it unless you cut it off and resew it's just gonna keep doing that.
Yes. And there's something very freeing in the idea of schemes coming unraveled, because schemes usually are associated with some kind of nefarious, or some kind of ambition. And when you have it all unraveled, all of a sudden you're free of that ambition. You are free to be yourself. You can take that deep breath and be who you are. um I hear all of that in those lines. And in, yeah, all that's left is you and I. Again, who is the you? Is it everybody you, that here we are in humanity? Is it some kind of higher power, or is it a romantic, or is it a family? I'm I've already said this, but I'm just really struck by the fact that there's this dichotomy in the song of this extreme intimacy. He's letting you into some very personal thoughts, and he's literally saying to you, reaching out to you and talking to you. Yet it could be something so widely encompassing to be everybody. There's that very intimate and this very open and wide at the same time that works. And I think it works really well with the instrumentation, because it's that very simple, yet it couldn't be more beautiful. You could have 1,000-piece orchestra and it would not sound as full and rich as these three guys without a drummer in
Yeah,
a
and
little studio.
the mandolin, it sounds like, it sounds
Mm-hmm.
like a mandolin. The other thing I wanted to mention is all my schemes you mentioned have come unraveled. All my dreams have come unraveled gives you a totally different concept. It's a totally different
Mhm.
meaning. So I agree with you. Schemes is another great word because I'm once again I'm trying to not read into too much this, but you're if this is about a relationship, um, you know, his significant other or her, because we have a couple of people who uh that are females that are singing, your partner's called you on your blank, right?
Mhm.
They've called you, your screams unravel, called you on your blank, and all that's left is you and I, and he's admitting, I will try, I will stumble, but I'm ultimately going to get there. I'm going to get to go. Now I have many miles before I go, and
Mhm.
this is not a journey that's going to happen overnight. But if you're
Yes.
take a drink, now Mary, climb in. This is a town full of losers who are pulling out of here to win, right? This he's saying,
Yes.
this is a journey we're on together. I will be your true companion when we reach the other side. Is just
Right.
is um I really love this, and keep it going, right? Ghosts on the trees, there's ghosts on the wires, asking questions and showing signs. Shivering with truth, they're lighting fires all down the line, and I will try and I will stumble, but I will fly. He told me so.
Yeah. I mean, there's just so much just in that one verse. The other
Yeah.
thing that I was preparing for this, listening to all these different versions, and I'm struck by how in some songs there's a particular verse that it's like, oh, he really killed it there. That's when he brought this song home. There isn't that verse here because every verse, every chorus hits you with the same kind of impact of like, whoa, I never thought about it that way, or oh, that makes me travel down this thought path, or you just get that little chill of feeling, um that like a ghost in the trees, and asking questions and showing signs. I just really love the dichotomy in so much of this, that he's putting it that they're looking for answers, but also pointing you to answers at the same time, which is life, you know,
It
what you
absolutely
need to
is.
figure things out is to ask.
Yeah.
Yes.
The other thing that this may be redundant, but this song really speaks to me is I've loved the covers you sent us, and I've enjoyed them. And but John's voice is a unique instrument in this song. The way he's phrasing, the way he is using his voice, and the way he changes his tone and volume, it I I think I don't think I've told this story on this podcast, but I've told it plenty of times on Set Listing Bruce. Is when Linda first went when she went to her second Bruce show, she's we were going and she's like, I just don't understand him. He mumbles too much. I can't understand what he's saying. And I said, pretend it's an instrumental and his
Uh-huh.
voice is just another instrument. Just get the feeling and the emotion from him, and then later you can worry about the words. John always has a unique voice, and we are biased. I love the way he sings.
Mm.
He will never be on the 100 greatest singers, of vocalists of Rolling
He's not
Stone.
a crooner.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. But he uses his voice well on a lot of songs, and I really think he uses it on this one. What are your thoughts?
I absolutely agree. And I do think it was not too long before or after that he had vocal surgery to remove the cyst from his vocal cords. And I wanted to pick up on what you were saying about how he's using his voice as an instrument. There are times that he's almost shouting. It very much reminds me of a preacher, of calling to the congregation of like, can I get an amen? Can you get behind me? Or there are some times where he is, speaking in a very plain spoken, like he's talking to that. Is it a lover? Is it a family member? Is it a higher power of just, you know, I need that strength to keep on going for these many miles before I go. And, you know, it really just speaks to the humanist ideal, which is that, our life here is where we really need to find meaning, and our heaven, whatever, that, it is in the journey of to our final destination before we leave this mortal coil, that we have to fly and be proud and high. So,
And yes, you talked about, right, like proud and high or low and humble many miles before I go. And he repeats that many miles ago, proud and humble. This is just a gem of a song that
it
is
is.
it and I understand why the Academy chose to honor this album. And this far in his career, and I realize this is what 15, 20 years ago, but I mean, when, however, I can't do math, right? But it was
It's
nice to,
over 20 years ago. Yeah.
yeah, but it was so well done and really nice. Yeah. And by the way, we will include, I will remember to put the cover links in the show notes, because they are all really well done. They did a great job on that cover.
Yes. And to just make sure that we mention, one of the covers that we traded with each other was Jake Thistle, who has been on stage with John and does lots of little YouTube shows. He's, I believe, still in college, so a young man, but an adult, and has been recording John songs since he was like a preteen, I think. He does a great version of this. And there's a couple of others that I think were kind of using it as a just showcasing a technique. Again, Jesse and I are not musicians, so we can't really speak
Right.
to the chord progressions and all of those kind of things. But I think there's something about the rhythm and the chords in this that people who are learning folk music are drawn to and want to kind of get their hands dirty with this and play with.
Yeah.
So there's lots of stuff out there for people, as well as the links that Jesse shares on this episode. Go look, because it's amazing when you see someone who is an established recording artist who has their own sound that wants to adapt that sound to this simple but beautiful song, or someone who obviously is still trying to figure out all the mechanics and what is my sound, or what do I want to do, who can pick this up and find something in themselves by exploring this.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else? I mean, I feel like we could just
I don't want
praise
to
it
go
all
first
night.
when we've
Yeah.
already.
No,
Yeah.
this is a 5 to me. I mean, I know
Okay.
that should be very rare. We give 5s, but I just think this is a gem. I adore this song, and um, and I will. This could be, I'm overly praising it after our last episode where we did not have a
Right.
very good experience. But yeah, I would. I, if you said, "Oh, Jesse, that's a little high," I would go 4.5. But right offhand, I'd give it a 5.
And I have been struggling and teetering with the 4 or the 5, because we listened to it and you can hear just how moved I am by it. Um, and one of the yardsticks I use is if I'm introducing someone to John and I want to come up with an example of here's a song that is just going to knock your socks off right out of the gates. It doesn't need time to be worn in or for you to understand the backstory of why it's so great or anything like that. Well, I chose this song as one of, I think it was only five that I played before I gave a sermon called The Gospel According to John Hyatt to a group of congregation of Unitarian Universalist Church. And it was many people that I had known for a very long time, and also a whole bunch of strangers, many of whom had never heard John Hyatt before. Now, there is so much spiritual in there that, like, how could I not include it? But also, it's such a strong song that I would put it out there as the introduction. And also, speaking of different voices, this album came out around the time that my much younger sister was born. So this is one of her first introductions to John. And when she was a toddler and literally just learning to talk, my mom would put her on the phone because this is, I think, the first John Hyatt song she ever sang. She was like, there was something really cute in her little toddler way that she got some of the words wrong. It was like many mile, like she couldn't get the miles. It was
Yes.
a singular. Before I go, and just on and on in that, screaming at the top of your lungs child
Yeah.
voice. So yeah, I gotta go five too. It
Good.
can't all be five, but God, I can't not give this one a
Well,
five.
we've not given that many fives out. So, so this is good. Very nice.
Yes.
I did want to say that we got a very nice message from Chris K. He sent in on our Facebook page, and I'm quoting him, "I just discovered your podcast today, and what a brilliant idea for a podcast. I love John Hyatt's music, and I'm looking forward to listening to your podcast on the drive to and from work, from Chris in the UK." So thank
Thank
you,
you,
Chris.
Chris.
Yeah, that was
We're international.
yay.
Woo!
Yes, I that made me smile very much. And we always talk about doing this. Our buddies, Rob Carmack and JB Clark, who do Bruce Springsteen Sings the Alphabet, which was um our inspiration.
Inspiration.
They're back doing their fourth season. They're going through all the songs they haven't, and right now they're doing all Bruce cover songs because it's just alphabetically how it's worked out. But I told them I'd give them a shout out every once in a while, and so we appreciate it. If someone wants to reach us, what's the best way?
They can reach us on our Facebook page, which is Perfectly Good Podcast on Facebook. We also have a Gmail, Perfectly Good PD at Gmail. I am Sylvan Groth on Facebook. I'm Sylvan Green Eyes on Twitter. And yeah, reach out.
Yeah, and I am at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter, though I will tell you right now, I'm very Bruce heavy on Twitter. And as Sylvan often mentions, we do have a share drive, so you can see what songs are coming up. We have a projected day of when we're going to talk at them, and we are always open to having someone join us on the third chair to discuss a song with us. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I'm not worried about blowing the curve by having someone
No,
come in
no,
and
not at all.
give their own rating.
No, not at all.
Yeah. And we did also get a question, I believe, on Gmail about Adios to California.
Yes, we did.
Reminder that did come alphabetically beforehand, and we decided not to talk about it during the A's. That was mostly Sylvan being a chicken. I needed to get our feet a little bit wetter before we jump into that song. So we're going to discuss it when we get to the R's because there was an early version called Right Now. So we are going to discuss Adios to California. And believe me, it was not skipped over because we do not respect it as a part of the John Hyatt catalog. Quite the opposite.
All right. Well, Sylvan, listeners, only thing we got to say is have a little faith.
Have a little faith. Thank you, Jesse.
Well, thank you. Bye.
Baby, we can come on home, put the cow horns back on the Cadillac and change the message on the coat of lawn. Baby, we can come on